Trellis stitch patterns are often quite open patterns, but you could have a look at filling some of the squares in. So here's one that I have done with French knots. So I put down my basic square grid, and I just held the grid down with half a cross stitch, and then I filled every other square in on one row with French knots. So I'll just do a few of those to show you how to do that. Now try and work them all in the same direction so that you've got some consistency in your knot. So I've just started in the top left of the square there, and just really pack them in tight and make them solid. If you look at traditional pieces of embroidery, you'll often see trellis stitch much more solid than some of the previous videos that we've got up on the trellis patterns. They'd fill them in a lot more, fewer stitches, different kinds of stitches, but they would make their patterns more solid. So you can have a go at filling in some of these squares with some of the stitches that you know. And the French knots are nice because you do lots of individual knots, so you could shade the colours if you wanted to shade the colours. You could do colonial knots in the middle, which are a little bit bigger, so you can give it a bit of definition if you want and actually give it some three-dimensional form. But pack them in nice and closely so there's no gaps between them. You can see I'm working fairly consistently, so I'm starting on the left and going over to the right. You can dot around a little bit if you want to. It's harder to fill the shape in like that. You'd end up with the small gaps, so this is a good way of making sure that you fill it in solidly. And I think I can just squeeze another row in there. Two more, I think. Really pack them in tight. Try not to go over the lines though, because the yellow lines are what defines the grid shape. Last one. There we go. You start to get a really nice solid filling in these patterns now, and it makes them look quite different to the open ones. Finish that off. Now I've done every other row, so I'll do something different in these ones. So different filling stitch you could use. Satin stitch is a nice simple one. Changing the colour. I'm now going to go between the rows of French knots and then between them vertically as well. So satin stitch, just straight stitches lying next to each other. Try and get them so there's no gaps between them. And so they go right up to that yellow line. You can even just angle that needle out a little bit. Really nice solid block of colour. Miss a square out. A kind of a checkerboard pattern, which looks really nice. Make sure when you get to the edges you might have some half squares, so you'll need to fill those half squares in. Here's one here. Just keep the stitch going. regardless of what the shape's doing at the edge. Just do those few there. You can leave it open like that if you want, or if you want to go further and fill the whole thing in. You could change colour again and fill in between again. You could repeat your French knots or your satin stitch, or you could try some bullion knots. If you've done bullion knots, they work quite nicely, and just have some fun filling in the grid.